Okay, so before we begin, let's briefly talk about your 2000 point game. If you haven't played a 2000 point game yet, and if you haven't built your army around 2000 points yet, this is probably a really good video for you, so stay tuned. The reason behind why 2000 points is the standard for Warhammer 40,000 is because that's where you can get creative, and you will have very different lists from person to person typically, and 2000 points allows you to take your list to extremes. It can also allow you to have a very balanced list. Essentially, 2000 points allows you to bring whatever you want. So let me preface this video by saying that while I will recommend certain lists for competitive play, you are completely free to bring whatever you want. And in fact, a lot of Warhammer players, a lot of older players, recommend just having fun, which is highly what I recommend as well. But today, for the sake of this video, and because some of you have asked me to do this video, I will show you the list that I'm currently using. I've had a lot of success in using this list. It's not easy to use in some way, but it's also really powerful. I'll be getting into two different lists today, one for each detachment. We currently have 2 detachments for World Eaters. So one list for each detachment would be great, I think, for today. But I will be testing out more lists and then giving you feedback on a number of different lists that I have in mind as well. As I said before, 2000 points allows you to just infinitely test out different lists and different directions in which you want to go. And I'll also do some videos for 1000 and 1500 points because I've had some requests as well, if you're interested in that. But I think a lot of people here just want to build towards their 2000 point army, so this is going to be what this is. All right, so we'll start with the first list. Hey guys, it's me from the future editing this video. I feel I have to mention that the list that I'm about to show you guys is the exact same list as the one that Brian Daugherty is using. I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. I'll leave it in the description along with the list and the details. Yeah, enjoy the video. All right, let's jump in. This is the list that I'm currently using. This is using the Berzerker Warband detachments. It is a very balanced list and pretty good for what it is. I'll introduce all of the units first, and then I'll sort of jump in and talk about their abilities and how I usually use those units. First, we have Angron. He will be the Warlord of your army. And then you have Lord Invocatus. You have 1 Master of Executions with the Berserker Glaive enhancement. That's really good for him. And that's going to be it for your characters. And then you have 4 units of BATTLELINE, 2 units of 10 Jakhals. They are really good because they can sticky objectives. And then you have 2 units of Berzerkers, 1 unit of 5, and 1 unit of 10. And then that's going to be it for BATTLELINE. You have 1 transport, and that is going to be the Chaos Rhino. Fantastic unit for scoring. And then for other data sheets, you have 2 units of 3 8-bound. So 2 units of 3 8-bound, not 6. And then 1 unit of 2 units of Exalted 8-bound, one with 6 models and the other with 3. So you have a total of 4 different, you have a total of 4 8-bounds, 2 units of regular 8-bounds and 2 units of Exalted 8-bound, 1 6 and 1 3. And of course, you have to bring 1 unit of Chaos Spawn, which is also a great scoring and a great screening unit as well. And they're also really tough. So yeah, that's going to be it for the units. We're going to talk about how to play this. Firstly, for deployment, typically I don't attach your Lord Invocatus to a unit. You have the option of attaching him to a 8-bound or exalted 8-bound unit, but I probably don't recommend it. I've had a lot of success just deploying him solo. And then Master of Executions will always lead a pack of 10 Berzerkers. They're just really, really good because they allow him to be the unit to have fight first. He also has precision, and he's fantastic against characters. He has the reroll to hit, reroll to wound ability. A lot of people say that Berzerkers are just sort of bodyguards to the Master of Executions, but Berzerkers are actually really good melee units. They can also throw grenades, and a lot of cases that's really, really strong as well. And then you have your Rhino. Typically, I have my pack of 5 Berzerkers inside the Rhino when I'm deploying, but you also have the option of putting your unit of 10 with Master of Executions inside your Rhino. So it really depends, but most of the time you're going to start with your 5 Berzerkers inside of the Rhino. And then you have 2 units of Jakhals. One of them will be typically be used to screen your home objective. Always put one in your home objective. That way when you start the game, you'll have sticky. And don't expose your Jakhals as well. That way you'll have your home objective for the rest of the game. They're also really good for screening because with a pack of 10 Jakhals, you only need to have 2 models that are 2 inches away from one of the models, so it's really easy for you to screen out your home objective with your Jakhals. Typically you need two units to screen, so I use my Chaos Spawn to screen as well. This is to prevent your opponent from deep striking all the way in your deployment zone. Or at least if they do, then they would be put in far off to the edge, or they can't do anything meaningful. Just stuff like that. And then of course you need your Rhino. Rhino itself is really good for scoring. Rhino has a movement of 12. It's very typical of a transport, but it's able to get from probably from your deployment to the mid objective pretty easily. And so you're able to score things like area denial. It's also good to just put your Rhino there and then force your opponent to kill the Rhino. And then if they kill the Rhino in shooting, you can just pop a command point for the sticky objective. This detachment has the stratagem to sticky an objective if your unit dies on an objective. So yeah, everything is pretty balanced. You might, with this detachment is, you have one unit for each job, so you don't want to expose any of your units early on. So if you're fighting against an army with shooting, make sure that you are well covered, and if you are moving forward, then make sure you are moving from cover to cover. If let's say you choose to advance and you roll a 1 or 2 and you're not able to get in cover, I recommend just staying put and not moving your unit. Even if you've declared a move or advance, you can move up to that distance, so you can actually move 0, and that would be perfectly fine. You also remember you also have a stratagem to auto advance, so you don't have to roll for advance, and you can immediately move an additional 6 inches with your advance for 1 command point. So really good stratagem, especially if you want to get your first turn charges. That's another thing, is that if you are playing against really good players, first turn charges are almost always bad because they've probably screened out a lot of their really strong units. So that makes you unable to get to the really strong units early on. So you might want to be patient and sort of just be ready in cover so that you pose a threat, but not necessarily use your first turn charges. A lot of my matches where I have been successful in winning, I don't do first turn charges. So keep that in mind if you're playing really against really good players. They're not going to let you have their strong units in the front. So the way you play this is essentially you want to put your 8-bound, 2 units of 8-bound somewhere close to the front. I'll also do a video talking about how to move your 8-bound. For example, they have a natural Scout 6, so you can deploy them out of cover and move them back if you need to into cover. That way you actually are able to move a farther distance without exposing yourself during the first turn, because you don't know if you're going first or if your opponent's going first. So always deploy your 8-bound somewhere in the front, because they pose a very real threat to your opponent's front lines. And then I typically have my big unit of Exalted 8-bound, unit of 6 Exalted 8-bound in reserve. They are really, really good for you to put in reserve, because it poses a huge threat to a lot of your opponent's armor, vehicles and infantry. They have eviscerators, and they also have chain fists, which are really good for both. So they can kill pretty much anything. So to have them in reserve is fantastic. And then you have your unit of 3 Exalted 8-bound. You can also put them in reserve because they have Deep Strike, and they will be pretty effective as well, but I think having 1 reserve is usually enough. And your Exalted 8-bound can also get Scout 6 from your Lord Invocatus. So Lord Invocatus is really good for when you're deploying. You are able to, when the game begins actually, before the first turn, you are able to give Scout 6 to 2 infantry units that are 6 inches away from, 6 inches or less away from Lord Invocatus. That includes your Jakhals and your Berzerkers, and also your Exalted 8-bound. So typically what I would do is I would gauge the layout. It's very common for me to give Scout 6 to my Jakhals, just so that they can tag the closest no man's land objective with Scout 6 and then move without having to advance. That way they're able to perform actions like recover assets or whatever that may be, and still be in cover and also tagging the objective. So they're doing 3 things at once, and that's why I usually always give Scout 6 to my Jakhals. And then you have the option to give the Berzerkers Scout 6 or Exalted 8-bound. That's where it gets tricky. If your opponent has a vehicle somewhat exposed, or if you're able to get to him with 1 8-bound or 1 8-bound and 1 Exalted 8-bound, then it might be really good to give it to the Exalted 8-bound. It's kind of rare if you're playing against good players that they would expose their vehicles so early on. So in that case, I would give it to my Berzerkers, so that if I go first, they're able to move into cover and close to the center of the battlefield. That way I can pose a real threat. Berzerkers, as you know, have fairly slow speed. They are movement 6, so having that extra scout move is actually really good. So yeah, that's about it for the deployment and some tips on how to play. I will probably talk a lot more about how to play this army and this detachment in a future video, but this is my list. This is my favorite list to use. It's the current list that I'm using for my local league. There's 40 people in my league, I think, and I've gotten 2 wins so far against a Tau player, and a really good Tau player, and a really good Blood Angels player as well. So yeah, let's jump to the next. All right, here's your second list for this video. This is using the new Grotas detachment, Vessels of Wrath. It's a really good detachment. It's very different from the first one, but the list I feel is pretty strong. I have tested out this list about 3 or 4 times, so not a lot. Don't take my word for it. Go ahead and try it out. I think it's really good. I think it has a lot of potential and possibly some improvements along the line. So this detachment basically allows you to pick 3 infantry units. I think It's limited to your Berzerkers. I think you can also pick your Jakhals, and then Terminators, 8-bound or Exalted 8-bound. You can pick the champion out of those units, or I think you can also pick the leader that's leading that unit to basically be a vessel of wrath. And what that means is essentially you are guaranteed one of the blessings of Khorne. So you can automatically pick one of the blessings. This is after you roll your blessings of Khorne. So for example, you roll your blessings of Khorne, you pick 2 blessings for your entire army, and then you can pick one more for 3 of those units. And that is amazing because that pretty much guarantees 3 of those units advance in charge, for example. Or it guarantees it lethal hits, which is not necessarily something you would get every turn. This basically ensures that you get it, and it's really amazing. One bad thing about this detachment is that you lose your +1 to attack, +1 to charge when you charge and well, +1 to attack and +1 to strength when charging. That's actually huge. It makes your units a lot less killy. But at the same time, it guarantees you a lot of threat, especially with your 8-bound, which they already have Scout 6. So they pretty much guarantee you that you will be able to charge, advance and charge in the first turn. So it makes your opponent want to deploy back and to screen a lot, and that just makes things really amazing. So I'll introduce the list to you first. The only character we will be using for this list is your Master of Executions with the Arc Slaughterer enhancement. I think it's +1 strength and +1 AP. I think it's +1 AP and +1 strength, while it is a Vessel of Wrath. I believe that's what that is. It makes it more killy. Fantastic thing. The +1 damage is the thing that you're looking for. He will obviously be leading the Berzerkers. And then you have for BATTLELINE 2 units of Jakhals, 10 Jakhals each, and 2 units of Berzerkers, exactly the same as the first list. A unit of 5 and a unit of 10. It's always fantastic to be able to have a smaller unit of Berzerkers to be able to clear a weaker unit, for example, and not sacrifice your larger, more expensive unit of 10. That's why I always have 1 unit of 5 and 1 unit of 10. And then for your other data sheets, for your transports, you have 2 Chaos Rhinos. You can opt to have 1 and replace it with a Chaos Spawn or another unit of Jakhals, but I think 2 transports could be really good as well. And then you have, for your other data sheets, this is where all of your points are going into, you have 2 units of 8-bound, 1 unit of 6, and 1 unit of 3. And then you have 2 units of Exalted 8-bound, 1 unit of 6, and 1 unit of 3. And then you have 1 unit of Chaos Spawn. Hey guys, I completely forgot to mention that I brought a unit of 10 Terminators, so I'm just editing this in. So yeah, unit of 10 Terminators using Chain Fists, Power Fists, and also Autocannons and Combi Weapons. So yeah, I'll leave it in the description, so sorry about that. So how you would play this list is you would want to deploy your 8-bound far in front because they do have Scout 6, and that is fantastic. It is possible that your opponent does screen you with infiltrators, in which case your scouts would be kind of nullified. This is not going to be all cases though. There are a lot of lists and armies that don't have infiltrators, or they just have 1 unit, so they can't block out your advance on every front. So always put your 8-bound in front, but make sure that your 8-bound are able to scout into cover. That's super key, and super important is to not expose any of your units. I don't care if it's like the cheap units like your Rhino and your Jakhals, I don't care. You always deploy such that they can either be in cover or they can get into cover with scout. So that's always going to be the case, but always try to put your faster units in front because you want to be able to have the biggest threat. The fastest units are at the front so that they can get to your opponent's front lines quickly if you need to. Even if you don't, As I said earlier, in a lot of cases, you won't get your first turn charges, or in most cases, if you do get your first turn charges, it's not a good idea. You still want to put that threat on the table. You still want to put your 8-bound in front, because you want your opponent to be careful. You want your opponent to think about deploying backwards, right? Because you want that board presence. So yeah, always deploy your fastest units in front, and then always be able to get into cover if you're not already in cover. For this, you don't have your Lord Invocatus, so your Exalted 8-bound and your Berzerkers and your Jakhals won't have Scout 6, so you would always want to put them in cover. You might want to put your Exalted 8-bound somewhere in the front in cover. You might want to also put your unit of 10 Berzerkers somewhere safe, but also be able to move into position, move into cover while posing a threat for the next turn. And then for your rhinos, since you have 2 rhinos, rhinos are dedicated transports, so they always have to have a unit in them to begin the game. So when you're deploying a rhino, you can't deploy your rhino without a unit in them. My recommendation is to put 1 unit of Jakhals in one of your rhinos, and to put your unit of 5 Berzerkers into the other rhino. Either that, or you would be able to put your unit of 10 Berzerkers with Master of Executions in the other rhino. I think a lot of people misunderstand that you always have to use your rhino to move your units to the front and be exposed and be fine with being exposed. I don't think that's the case. I think rhinos are always going to be used to score, mostly, and you don't want to leave your rhino exposed with a unit in them, because that thing is going to disappear. If your opponent has any shooting at all, your rhino is going to disappear and the unit in it is going to disappear. What you want to do though, if you put your Jakhals into your rhino, is one of 2 things. One is to immediately disembark your Jakhals and get it into an objective while staying in cover. But if you can't reach it, then you might want to use your rhino to move to that objective and to disembark your Jakhals into cover while also tagging the objective. I think that's the only 2 things that you can do that's good with that combination. And then the other rhino, there's a whole number of things that you can do. You are able to score things that allow you to score things that require you to take the middle objective, for example, like area denial with your rhino. Sacrificing a rhino for area denial is probably a no-brainer. And also, if your opponent has infiltrators that are screening you, preventing you from moving forward, you can use your rhinos to shoot out the screens, and you can also, with this detachment, actually sticky an objective if you kill an enemy model on that objective. So you can use your rhino to, I don't know if it's restricted to the fight phase or not, but you can basically maybe tank shock an enemy unit in an objective, and then you can actually kill one model and sticky that objective. But don't quote me on that, I'm still not sure about that. But there's so many things you can do with this detachment. Once you have deployed your 8-bound, if you go first, you might be able to move forward, scout forward, and then give them advance in charge and give them +2 to move. That makes their threat 11 plus your advance. Advance average roll would be something like 3 or 4. So your threat range becomes 16 inches plus your charge. It's a huge threat and a huge game changer. Being able to guarantee advancing charge is amazing. The only bad thing is that you actually don't get auto 6, so you're not able to use the stratagem to allow you to automatically roll a 6 for your advance. That's a stratagem that's for the Berzerker Warband detachment. But other than that, a lot of utility here. You would start off I'm pretty certain that you always want to start with your Terminators in reserve. Terminators have deep strike, so you can put them in a really good position to charge after you've rapid ingress them. I think you always want to rapid ingress your Terminators so that they can move and then shoot and then charge. You can put them in amazing positions to do all of those things, and they're really, really tough bricks. So it can really turn the tide on your opponent there. The only other thing that I think you should consider is that depending on the layout, you might want to put your unit of 6 Exalted 8-bound into Deep Strike as well. That way you have 2 big bricks that are in Deep Strike. There's some layouts, I think layouts 1 and 2, I'm not entirely sure, where it's a horizontal layout that has very little cover for you. So it's really difficult to move up your units towards your opponents without being exposed. That's where you want to put those 2 bricks into Deep Strike. The reason being, if you don't, you have to move up to get to your opponent, to your opponent's units, and they will inevitably be shot and be exposed before they can actually reach the target that that you want them to take. So yeah, depending on the layouts, if you get layout 7, it's pretty good. There's a lot of cover. Layout 7 is one of those layouts that are very advantageous to a melee army. So you can deploy everything except your Terminators for that one. So you decide. But I think this is a really, really powerful list. You have a lot of bricks here that you can give Vessels of Wrath to, and to give them lethal hits, sustain hits. You might even get both lethal and sustain in some cases. You always want to take lethal over sustain in most cases if you're hitting a big target. And then you can just so many things. I think there's also a stratagem for you to be able to prevent your opponent from falling back. That's a really amazing one. I think it also stacks with the aura of the Exalted 8-bound. So they have to take 2 leadership tests if they want to fall back. So you can just keep attaching your units to, charging your units and piling in and consolidating to your enemy units, and really, really fun detachment to use. But just as a disclaimer, this list isn't fully fleshed out, isn't fully tried out. So hopefully you guys can give me some feedback on this. If you've enjoyed the video, please give me a like, a subscribe, and maybe give me some comments on my 2 lists that I've given you today. And also let me know if you guys want to know more lists. I have so many lists. I have lists with Lord of Skulls in it, some shooting incorporated into the melee army, Forge Fiend, Predators, stuff like that. Also really fun lists and really strong lists. So if you guys want that, hit me up in the comments, and I will make more of these videos and more lists and more reviews and more tips. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay tuned for the next one.